Okay, class. Today we're going to be discussing leaving answers in terms of pi, which is here's a symbol for pi. Okay. Uh, let's suppose, for example, that they ask us to find the circumference of a circle in terms of pi. That was probably one of the first questions that you saw on the interim test this week. Don't feel bad if you didn't know the answer. We haven't covered it until right now. So let's talk about putting answers in terms of pi. Okay, specifically the circumference. We know that the formula for the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius, right? And in this instance here, they're telling that my radius is 1.6. So naturally, you would say that the circumference is equal to 2 pi times the radius, which is 2 pi times 1.6 in this instance. Well, I know that normally what you would do is you would multiply 2 times 3.14 times 1.6, and you would get a number. But notice here, notice what I did. I multiplied 2 times 1.6, and that gives me 3.2. 2 times 1.6, that gives me 3.2. And what I did was I left the pi next to it. So 2 times 1.6 is 3.2 times pi. And what I've done here is, leaving the pi alone, I've left my circumference in terms of pi. Now, can I multiply these two together and just get a regular circumference? Sure. 3.2 times 3.14, and I get 10.04. So the circumference of the circle, yeah, it's 10.04. But when they're asking for it in terms of pi, all you have to do is just leave the pi alone next to the number. Let's take a look at another example. Let's say my radius is 10 inches. And again, they want me to find the circumference in terms of pi. Well, again, I know the circumference is equal to 2 pi r. It's going to be 2 times pi times 10, and 2 times 10 is 20, and the pi is right next to it, so there's 20 pi. So there's my answer in terms of pi. Now, could I keep going with this to find just a regular number? Sure. If I do 20 times 3.14, the circumference will be 62.8. But if you want the circumference in terms of pi, you need to have the symbol pi just next to the number. So it'd be 20 pi. And by the way, 20 pi is equivalent to 62.8. Okay. Now, let's put any answer in terms of pi. Okay? Let's put any answer. Let's discuss put any answer in terms of pi. Well, the circumference of a circle is given, but put the answer in terms of pi. Okay? So they're going to give you the circumference of the circle, and they're going to want you to put the answer in terms of pi. Well, here's my circumference. My circumference, let's just say it's 62.8 inches, okay? Okay? And they want me to put it in terms of pi. Well, the thing to remember is that pi is somewhere in there. It's somewhere in my circumference. It's somewhere in their number, right? How did they come to this number? Well, they did 2 times pi times the radius, and they got all of this, right? So pi is already calculated somewhere in there, right? Well, the thing you got to remember is that if they got it in there using multiplication, because it was 2 pi r, you can pull it out using division. Okay? So remember that in here we have 62.8. It's equal because you multiplied 2 pi and r, right? So if we use multiplication to get the number and get it in there, we can use division to pull it out. We can use division to pull it out, okay? So here's the thing to remember. If your circumference is 62.8 and you want to pull out a pi, well then all you have to do is divide it by pi. All you have to do is divide it by pi. So the value of pi is what? Is 3.14. So all you have to do is take 62.8, pull out the pi, divide it by pi, which is 3.14, and watch what happens. Here's 62.8. I'm going to divide it by 3.14, and watch what I get. I get 20. So I get 20. But remember, I got to put the pi next to it in terms of pi. There's my circumference in terms of pi. So in order to take a number and put it in terms of pi, all you have to do is divide out the pi. Let's take a look at this question here. See if you can do this question here. Take 10.048 and put that in terms of pi. Take a second to do that. Okay, so we start off with our number 10.048. And we want to put that in terms of pi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide out the pi. I'm going to divide 3.14. When I do that, it gives me 3.2. So in other words, the circumference of this is going to be 3.2 pi. Excuse me, forgive me, the circumference is going to be, in terms of pi, is going to be, yes, it's going to be 3.2 pi. Because I divided the pi out of here, I got 3.2, but I got to put the pi next to it. And by the way, if I take 3.2 pi, and 3.2, and I multiply times pi, what do you think I'm going to get? I'm going to get exactly what I started with. Okay? Let's take another question. Let's say that your circumference is 43.96, and they want you to put that in terms of pi. What do you think the answer is going to be in terms of pi? Take a second to figure that out. Well, I'm going to start off with my 43.96. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide out the pi. I'm going to divide it by 3.14. That's going to give me 14, which means then that my circumference for a circle that has a circumference of 43.96 is really going to be 14 pi. It's going to be 14 pi. So you take this number, you divide the pi out, it gives you 14, and then you put it next to it. And remember, when you multiply these two, it's going to give you this. And actually, putting the circumference in terms of pi has a lot of benefits. And that's how you put answers in